So, this episode is about to get a little heavy.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Jimmy James from The Jimmy James Show, A to Z. But that's enough about me. I'm actually just wanting to take 1 minute of your time to say that no matter where you're from, no matter your background, your thoughts, your ideas, your gods, your religions, your deities, whatever. The reason why I like the TBD podcast network is because of the difference it brings to each show. And Eddie, the host, his perspective on that topic. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you for being you.
But first, you are listening to the TBD Podcast Network. I'm your host, Eddie, and this is a Thinkers podcast, hoping to instill some sort of critical thinking and utilizing the use of Occam's razor. Obviously, about 90% of this show is going to be opinion based. If I have facts and so on to back it, I will do so. You will always find links in the show notes whenever I'm talking about something. In fact, with this show, I was very emotional in the first part of this, so hey, just be ready for that. This is a volatile time in our history, a volatile time in America, and it's odd that so many things are so easily divisive, and it frustrates me when people find a hill to die on, but don't care to expand their mind. They don't care to listen to other people. They don't care to advance their general perspective. And that's the part. To expand your paradigm, to me, is probably one of the hardest things to do as a human, but also one of the most imperative things to do when making an opinion. But at any rate, enjoy the rest of the show. Let's have some fun. I do not understand how easy it is for people to write off human life as if it is no more than an animal or something you pick up at the supermarket. I don't get it. Maybe there's some kind of complexity to the whole situation, or some simplicity to it, that you just say the people that I love mean the world to me, and everybody I don't know that can go fuck themselves. And maybe my particular belief is just difficult because I like to think that I give most people the benefit of the doubt. I like to think that I try to love and encompass all life in a fairly logical sense, I guess. Obviously, I understand the circle of life. I understand sustenance. I understand the cosmos, the give and the take. And I understand that there are certain points, certain things that humans are stewards of, and that we should respect the things that we're working towards, the people. But when it comes to the quality of human life, whether they're homeless or drug addicts or people overseas, I don't understand how we can so easily write them off. All right, so I found a Facebook post that I commented on, and it says, "You watched the Hunger Games and sided with the resistance. You watched Divergent and sided with the resistance. When it's fiction, you understand, yet you refuse to see it when it's the reality you're living in." Now, that kind of speaks to me a little bit because I don't refuse to see. In fact, as I've said multiple times on this show, I am an anarcho libertarian. That is an borderline anarchist with libertarian beliefs, meaning that I believe in live and let live. And as long as no harm is becoming to me or my property, then no harm should befall you and yours. And this is just a very simple perspective to me. To me, it's very simple. Now, that being said, that is not how government really works. Government works on the premise of extortion and utilizing the strong hand of government power to tell you what to do, how to do it. And basically, I'm against any type of particular heavy power structure. So if you are for life, there is no point where you should side with somebody to say that you side, like, for example, I'm just going to go ahead and spit this out: the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The attacks on 10/7 should not be brushed aside as if they didn't happen. If there is any truth to the attacks being committed by Hamas to Israeli people, then there should not be a, obviously that's what you have to look at. Hamas is a terrorist organization. But to ignore the fact that since 1940, the Israeli people have been pushing the Palestinians away, and not Netanyahu, the current prime minister, Bibi, has an electric border wall with machine guns on it, one of the most advanced militaries in the world. In fact, when I was in school, I had a history teacher that told me that the Israeli fighter jet pilots could outmaneuver US fighter jet pilots. So this is when I was in I want to say middle school or high school. And then you've got this third world country that is being blown to rubble, having their resources controlled, their power controlled. They are literally in an open air prison. And it wasn't for 40 years, 1940 is when the I guess the immersion of the societies kind of came into play. But it wasn't until the 1980s that Hamas came around. It took 40 years for them to develop an antithesis to the current government rule of that area. And there's a great documentary. I've only seen half of it. I need to go back through it, and it was a while ago. Completely subtitled, but it's called Four Broken Cameras or Three Broken Cameras, maybe seven broken cameras. I can't remember. Something about broken cameras. I'll put the link in the comments. But it is kind of the Palestinian side under Israeli occupation. If you don't see that they are the resistance, the Palestinians are the resistance, and they've been the resistance since the 1940s and probably a little bit after, or till now, I guess. And you don't see the corruption and the coercion between the hierarchy of our governments, then you're missing out. Like, I don't understand how people can get so caught up in the red and blue, and this isn't even a red and blue thing. This is a life and death thing, right? So these people, and I do not condone the violence by Hamas to the Israeli people, just as I don't condone the violence from the Israeli government to the Palestinian civilians. I don't think that that's right. And I didn't agree with it when we did it in the US. And even being where I'm at now, when the towers went down on 9/11, I can't honestly say that I was with it then. I don't think I was on that it didn't make sense to be on that train of anger and revenge and perpetuating the human death cycle that society seems to have for each other. And I always think about that. Like, they're like, oh, we were such a unifying force in the country. The entire country came together to do what? We came together to agree that we wanted to kill the other people. I mean, is that our society? Is that who we are? I mean, one of the reasons that I started this podcast was to be able to actually come out and say and have conversations where it's like, you got to use your fucking brain. You have a brain and you have 2 ears to listen to both sides. You can listen to both sides and not develop an opinion to die on. I can agree that the Israeli occupation of Palestine and the power structure in there is wrong, and that they're being treated wrongly. I can also agree that Hamas firing rockets into Israel is bad and wrong. I don't have to fucking lay on one side. And you can't make me. I don't give a fuck who you are. You can't make me change my mind. How did that Wallace quote go? It says, "They'll never take our freedom." Like I don't know. Like I don't understand. Like you hear people talk about other people all the time, and I don't understand how it is that it's simple for us to pick a side and then dehumanize people and wish for their death, and then say that we're righteous, say that we're a Christian nation. Come on, man. Really? You can't do that. You can't. I don't understand how so many people can claim to be Christian and then not understand who Christ was, not understand the type of person he was, the things he did. But you claim that you're walking with Christ? Under what fucking rules are you walking with Christ? Are you helping the poor? Are you taking care of unwanted children? Are you protecting prostitutes? Are you protecting felons? Are you helping the homeless? Like what is it that you do that makes you think you walk with Christ? Because you have faith? Because you believe? Well, guess what? That's 90% of most humans. We all have faith. We all believe. But we don't claim to have a following to something that is not, that has very true purpose. Christianity has very fine points. To love him, God, and to love others. Pretty fucking simple. So if you're not loving others, if you are putting down other people, you are falling short of a very, very simple example, right? To me, I don't know. I mean, I know they got all these things convoluted, all these different religions and rules and how you can and not, and how you can do this and that. And man, I just don't believe that it's that complicated. And it all starts with how simple it is for us to dehumanize our neighbors, our human brothers and sisters. I mean, I can even set the whole animal thing aside and just talk about humans. Why is it so simple, especially in America, especially behind a computer, for all of our laptop warriors and our armchair activists to write off human life as if it doesn't matter? And in the same breath, ask, what's wrong with society? What the fuck is that? And I really didn't mean to make that kind of a rant about the Israel Palestine thing. Is more just the difference of resistance versus the power structures. Because that's usually the way that I tend to look at these things. Like, obviously, you look at cartels, you look at, terrorist organizations like Hamas, Al Qaeda, Taliban, and I could go on and on and on about the history of those things and why and how they were created, but it's not it's that's not part of what I'm trying to get at. The point I'm trying to get at is that you cannot hold yourself and put yourself into a higher category because you are not God. If you believe you're not God, I think there's only, honestly, and this is legitimate honesty for all the Christians I've ever known in my entire life, I only know one that I met in the last 5 years of my life that when you talk about world events or current events, doesn't matter who the person is. For the most part, doesn't matter who the person is. He always talks about the tragedy of the death. And I always feel like we've lost that. Maybe in America, we've become dehumanized to it because, the between gang killings and, officer killings and riots and cartels and all the other crap that goes on. It's almost like we've lost touch what it means when a life is taken. The last episode covered grief, and I think this would be one of those instances where you want to talk about having some kind of trauma to deal with. It's bad enough that you got to deal with somebody passing away, but let alone having them taken away, And I've had family members that have dealt with that. I grew up in a pretty bad neighborhood as a kid. I honestly, like, thinking back on it, it really was never that bad. It still kind of isn't. I mean, there's always places that you don't go into in the hood, you stay out of or whatever. It's the overall idea, though, is that, things were, a lot of people say things were better back then, but statistically speaking, up until, 2021, things were pretty low, like as far as violent crimes and all that kind of stuff. But my biggest point to this episode is mostly going to the online rhetoric that a lot of people seem to be caught up in, and making it very simple to say it's okay to kill. Currently, it's it's not even Hamas. It's Palestinians versus Israelis. It's almost like if you hear our talking heads talk about it, they associate the Palestinians specifically with Hamas. All Palestinians are with Hamas. But the point being is that when you think it's okay for one side to kill another side without taking into account the innocent lives that are taken, without taking into account the civilian lives that are taken, you have to kind of figure out what is the order of magnitude that is acceptable for our society to say whether or not something is good, bad, or not, right? I'd love to think that we live in a world where we can end the cycle of revenge in a way that doesn't perpetuate a nonstop entropic nature of society. I mean, but it really does come down to the individual, right? Like, and that was my biggest thing that I think I was trying to get at in that rant, was that if you're the person that claims that society is horrible, why are you being as equally horrible as the society that you have disdain for? Why wouldn't you be the light that shines in the dark? Why wouldn't you be the heart that exists in the place of hate? Why aren't you the love that exists from, I mean, I'm not Christian, but if you know the teachings of Jesus, it's pretty simple. I mean, the basic fundamentals, on one of my episodes with my brother. He's got a very strong faith in Christianity, and he talked about like the basic rule of God is to love God and love people. I mean, we covered that like 3 or 4 times in that episode. It's spirituality and clean windows. You can go back and look at that episode, but that is, to me, the simplest form of everything. And I know that the hardest thing probably in human nature is to exchange love for violent affect on oneself, right? Like to tell somebody you love them as they're beating, maiming, raping your family is probably not in our human Rolodex, right? For emotions, like that, we don't think like that, we don't focus like that. So I was watching this video game awards with my little brother and my kids, and they were talking about, there was a quote from a game, and it says, goodness without teeth punishes not. And it's very similar to the warrior in the garden. The student asks the monk, he says, why do you preach peace but train for war? And he said, I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. And I often think about that with society and with like the perfect quote unquote utopian society where people are all loving and caring. And maybe this is the reality of it, is that you cannot really create that society because humans are sinful and we can be monsters if we get left unchecked. And I believe that the unchecked portion is a personal intrinsic value, right? Like I think Jordan Peterson said that. He said that let yourself become a monster and then learn to control it. And I mean, it depends on the angle that you look at that, right? I would say that there's too many monsters in the world. There's too much hate. But at the same token, I will always be the warrior in the garden. I will do what I can to be the warrior in the garden. And I think that more has to do with the idea of readiness. But even though I am always the warrior, I will always do my best to uphold what I believe love is, what I believe life is. And I think I will, for the most part, I think I've always been I'm a Gen Xer, like what they call a Zennial, right? Between Gen X and millennials. I think I have always, I grew up on like Public Enemy, like some of the gangster rap, NWA, Public Enemy. I think when I first bought cassettes, I bought a Public Enemy album, the Boys in the Hood soundtrack, and the Juice soundtrack. And something about that culture, something about bringing awareness to authority, speaking truth to power, that resonates with me. And I think that probably made my mom's job really difficult at raising me. But I feel like because of that background, of that connection of like, especially like with punk music, and I listen to everything now, but that is where I view the world. It's like, well, let's test okay, you got these random people, but how did these random people get over here? What caused that to happen? What is that? And you got to understand, if it's complicated, it's just complicated. This is what I think about the Israeli Palestine conflict, is that you can't, it's too complicated to pick sides, but you've got to see that there's a, for me, and again, not trying to make this a episode about that, but there are people that are being eliminated and that have been getting eliminated, that are fighting against a military that's way stronger than they've ever been. So you got to look at that authority. That's the biggest portion of it, is look at the authority. Who has the authority? Who doesn't have the authority? One of the best quotes was, and I think maybe I stated it already, but it said that one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. It's always going to be something I always think about when dealing with these kind of international deals. But I appreciate you for listening. I appreciate you for taking time to go through my rant and then still stick around to hear this portion of it. I think a lot of people when you're online, I think a lot of people have kind of tuned it out, but like there's so much hate and disdain online. And if you can, block, delete, remove people that really bring in and make you feel like you have to, that make you angry. If they make you angry, just stop talking to them. There's no point. That's not the kind of person we need in this world. We need positive energy. We need love. We need to spread love around. Support your small businesses. Support your fellow podcasters. Support your fellow local creators, your local musicians. Support your local businesses. Like, that's the stuff that we need to focus on. Support your communities. Focus on your home politics, your town, your city, your state. Those are the things that we need to look at. Yeah, you can get on there and you can boast and talk about how much knowledge you have about XYZ. And I mean, geez, man, I don't think there's enough time that anybody wants to sit around and listen to my goofy ass talk for 4 hours. But I mean, that is what we do, right? Like that's what we podcasters do. We try to bring, well, some of us try to bring thought-provoking, hopefully inspirational, hopefully mind-cultivating moments where we all can agree that we can be better, and then we all can agree that there's enough hate in the world and we need to love more. I think more people feel that way than not. So to those of you that feel that way, thank you. I love you. You're my kindred spirits. How do you handle the chaos of the world? What do you do with that? If you're listening on Spotify, feel free to answer that question. I'll pin up your comment in there. Apparently I can save 500 comments. So that is going to be my goal, is to try to hit 500 comments on that thing. So if you want to leave a comment, go for it. I'll get you on there, and then maybe we'll build off of that. At any rate, thanks again. Hope you have a great week, great weekend. Hope you're having a wonderful life. If you're not, meditate. Enjoy the moment. And I'll catch you again next week. Take care. Peace.